Andy. This is the other director of the team, and it's really useful to have a trained architect for many years with us. In this little series of podcast, we'll be hoping that he can give us some hints and tips for things to look out for. Now, I think one of the things, obviously, when people look at a property at auction or on Rightmove, one of the main things they look for is how can we gain space in this property? How can we make this more spacious? Whatever it's for, normally it's to increase ROI maybe in an HMO or just to increase it as a great property, a family home. First of all, can you do anything under permitted development?
Yeah, it is possible to do a fair bit under permitted development rights. You do need to check. You need to really, go through a bit of a checklist to make sure that you can use permitted development rights or whether you're going to need full planning permission. Usually, you can extend a single story by either 3 or 4 meters out from the original house at the rear. This extends to 6 meters or 8 meters. So these different measurements are to do with whether the property is semi-detached or terraced. So in the case of a semi-detached or terrace, you can go out by 3 meters. If you're going to undertake neighbourhood consultation, you can go out a bit further. You can go out another meter, so 4 meters. And then in the case of a detached home, 6 meters and then 8 meters with a neighbourhood consultation. One of the things you have to be aware of is that the floor area of that extension must not exceed 50% of the garden area around the original house. That has to also factor in any sheds, previous extensions that may have been built, garages, a garden room, that sort of thing.
Okay, so that's a good rule of thumb. But if you take down the old shed that you're not using, then you can sort of replace it by a bit more of the extension. Is that right? That's something to consider.
I guess so, yes.
Yeah. And when should you do a neighbourhood consultation?
A neighbourhood consultation is really, that's something that the planning department normally do. If you go in for full planning permission, they will undertake a consultation with the neighbourhood, which quite often you see those bits of paper pinned up on telegraph poles and so on. And that's sort of notifying the local community that somebody's put in for planning permission within the neighbourhood, then sort of gives the neighbours an opportunity to comment or object.
When are you looking to go in for full planning? Or is there like a middle that you can do, like a not full planning, but you can consult them a bit in advance?
Something that I would recommend is, if you are going down the route of permitted development rights, to contact the planning authority and to go for a certificate of lawful development. That is sort of like a very quick and easy planning application, which will sense check it with the planners, and the planners will come back and say, yep, fine, here's your certificate of lawful development. Or if there's something weird that they find somehow that particular property has had its permitted development rights removed, which can happen for a number of different reasons, then they will let you know. That certificate of lawful development is a very useful piece of paper to have, not only for your own peace of mind and comfort, but also you may actually find that it's a lender's requirement. And I know that was a requirement, one of our development projects. In the case of a certificate of lawful development, they're normally a bit quicker to come forward with those. So I think in the past, it's probably taken the region of 6 to 8 weeks.
So that's not too bad. And what are the kind of things that that might get in the way of you getting that certificate of lawful development?
Like I said, one of the things is if that property that you're looking at to build an extension on has had permitted development rights removed in the past for any reason.
Can you tell us what a TPO is?
A TPO is a tree preservation order. It's possible that there might be a tree with a TPO in your back garden. Unlikely, but it's possible. That's another thing you can check via the planning website, and it'll have a register somewhere on the website. There'll be a register of all the tree preservation orders, and you can check by postcode or street name.
You can also check online whether any applications for planning's been put in the past as well, can't you, on any property? It's certainly been my experience since being involved in property. There are lots of things people wait for the solicitor to do than actually you can do straight away by yourself. I mean, one other thing is the restrictive covenants, aren't there? You can find out about restrictive covenants yourself, can't you? Is that
You
right?
can, yeah, yeah.
Okay. And how do you
So
do that?
that's done via the land registry. Done it myself just recently, actually. It's a form OC2, I believe it is. So basically, you just fill in the application form. You pay a fee, which I think in this case was £11. As long as you have the title register of the property, which most people are familiar with, the title register and the title plan. All you need is the title number, and then you can get the full deeds. So if on the title, within the text of the register, you see that there are restrictive covenants and there's no detail of those restrictive covenants on the register, you can apply for the full deeds.
I mean, you would get the title deed number and all of that from the vendor, wouldn't you? Because they'd have it from when they bought the property.
Yes, or
Yes.
if they don't have it, you can, again, that's something you can get for the same fee, actually, £11 from the land reg.
All of this can be done in advance before you decide to put in an offer even. That is really great to know. What else do you need to think about? If you go in there and you're thinking, oh yeah, that looks great and it looks like it's under 50%, blah, 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 great. We're going to be able to go for it. We're going to be able to extend. What else do you need to think about?
I mean, in terms of other legal requirements, you need to think about party wall agreements. If you're building an extension and it's going to affect the next door neighbours on one side or both sides, that's something you need to take into consideration. A party wall surveyor can draw up a party wall agreement. And in some cases, I possibly wouldn't recommend it, but you can, and people do, just knock on the door, and if actually they know their neighbours anyway, then they can agree it between them. But if anything goes wrong and you don't have a party wall agreement, then you're not covered legally.
Now, what does that mean actually for the uninitiated? What is a party wall agreement?
You have a shared party wall between your property and your next door neighbour's property, and if you're going to build up against that wall, that structure, and something goes wrong, say the loadings on that wall are too great and it starts to crumble or crack for any reason, the foundations are not strong enough, then your next door neighbour could put a claim in against you in court.
So that's to be taken into consideration. You might need to pay insurance for that, if you're going up more than one or two floors, especially.
Even for single story development, definitely something that should be taken into consideration.
So what are the other legal requirements?
So we covered TPOs, we covered restrictive covenants. The other sort of regulatory thing is, I suppose, building regs. Building regs covers, structural integrity, insulation, drainage, fire safety, electrics, glazing, ventilation, all those things, all the sort of the technical aspects of the building.
So even though you do it under permitted development, you will have someone coming and checking that all the building regs have been complied with.
Absolutely, yeah.
How do they know you're doing it anyway?
Well, some people do it under the radar, but again, if there's ever a problem and you haven't got the certification, then it leads to more trouble. You'll find that your lender will want to see the building regulations certification. One other thing that's not really covered under legal requirements, but something to consider at an early stage is access for construction, for your builders to get in and do the work. You just want to make sure really that it's not going to impinge on your next door neighbours.
So I want to talk a bit more about the neighbours, how it's going to affect them. People talk about privacy, light, things like that.
I mean, this probably applies more to 2- and 3-story extensions than to single story extensions, because of course you have your fencing up to normally about 1.8 meters, and any windows in a single story extension would be kind of hidden from view from your neighbours really by fences or walls. But as you go up in height, then of course you have to take into consideration not only the new windows that will be in your extension, but also the existing windows of your neighbours on both sides. So in terms of your neighbours on both sides, there's a sort of a rule of thumb that can be used, which is what I call the 45-degree rule of thumb, which is quite tricky to explain without a piece of paper and a pencil. Basically, it's a sort of a notional 45-degree line that you draw from the center point of those windows, the neighbour's windows, and your extension cannot impinge upon, can't go through or beyond that 45-degree line. So that's something that the planners will also use, that 45-degree.
So is that something to put in your pre-app?
It's something that an architect or an architectural technician will be aware of, and they will hopefully on their floor plans they will draw out those notional 45-degree lines to prove to the planners that they've taken that into consideration, to show that the new extension on your property doesn't extend further out or impinge upon those 45-degree lines.
That now sounds a bit scary if you're deciding whether to buy a property and you haven't actually got your architect yet. But sort of even more of a rule of thumb, think about it.
The other part of windows is the new windows that go into the new extension. So generally speaking, you will locate those windows to look out over your own rear garden, or avoid having windows on the two sides of the extension. You'll be directly overlooking your neighbours on one side or the other. So it's okay if you've got a bathroom on that side and you put in obscure glazing and have a restrictive opening on the window. That's absolutely fine. You can put windows on the sides for bathrooms, but not for habitable rooms.
Is that actually going to be a no-no with planning then, if it's habitable rooms?
Generally, yes. That would be a no-no.
You said something to me the other day about, well, that's not a very good plan because actually it's going to make the main bit of the house darker. So it's not going to be great. More space, but not so good quality space is something to think about.
So yes, this is a challenge that a lot of people find, especially when you put an extension all the way across the back of the existing wall. So the room that is immediately behind the new extension, if it's not open to the new extension, will likely be quite dark. One of the kind of the ways that people deal with that is to put roof lights into the new extension, the roof of the new extension.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So you have a lean-to roof that pitches up against the back of the existing house. On the underside of that lean-to roof inside, it's open to the rafters, and you put a couple of roof lights in, and then make sure to open up the wall and support it with a beam. And that extra light coming in from the roof lights should flood into that room behind the new extension. Right,
lovely. Well, I suppose if you're going really high end, you would actually, that extension could be all glass, couldn't it? So for that inside-outside living look.
Well, not on the roof.
But if I'm thinking of on the downstairs.
Could be the wall across the back.
Yeah.
Could potentially be mostly glass, yeah.
Could be mostly glass. This has been mainly about extending to the back. Is there assumptions about or need to be careful about? Anything else that comes to mind?
I mean, there's a series of sort of design and structural considerations to bear in mind. So I suppose thinking about the integration of the new extension into the existing structure, you just have to decide whether you're going for a flat roof or a pitch roof. If you're going for a pitch roof, you need to think about where the window sills are above it, the existing window sills. You need to take into consideration floor levels, sort of both inside and outside Because quite often you won't be on a completely flat site, it'll be sloping one way or the other. So you may need steps out into the garden, for instance, or you may need to do some excavation and digging. That then kind of brings to mind drainage, and
I was going to say
a
utilities.
favourite one. There's quite a lot of drainage it's very common to find drainage in back gardens. Generally, a lot of older houses have kitchens at the back, and then
And
they
bathrooms.
also have bathrooms
Yeah.
at the back.
Yeah.
So all the drainage kind of flows into the back garden, and then quite often that drainage is picked up across all the back gardens. If you're going to be building over that drainage, you either need to get a building over agreement or divert the drains beyond the extension.
Okay, so it's not just your problem, you sort of have to pick up the problem of everyone, kind of the
Yes.
whole
Yeah.
area.
If you're dealing with shared sewers, then yes.
That would be obvious to you when you're looking at the house, because you'd look at where the
It may or may
manholes
not be. Sometimes manholes are covered over and you can't necessarily see them straight away without digging around for them. Usually they are visible.
But you can ask the vendor where is the drainage, I suppose. What else is there utility wise?
So incoming services, always worth checking where all the incoming services are. Quite often, they will come in the front of the house, but not always. So always check. So you're looking at gas, electric, water, comms, so broadband, telephone.
If I'm making a family house, a sort of 3-bed family house, ultimately into maybe a 6-bed HMO, what effect is that going to have on the heating system, the electricity system? Are you going to be able to carry on using what you have, or would you always have to do it new, have a new boiler, etc.? What's the situation there?
In terms of the services, there shouldn't really be any need to upgrade any of them. I mean, with incoming water, some older houses still have lead pipes. So, you may want to consider whether, that's the lead is replaced. But the other services you should be able to reuse all of those. Boilers, though, you may need to upgrade depending upon how large the extension is. Certainly for HMOs, be looking at a higher spec boiler. So yeah, electrical requirements, there's extra circuits to put in. You may need to upgrade the fuse boards. There's quite a lot of the fuse boards are older now. Plumbing, it's sort of drainage, which we talked about, and then also factoring in existing foul drainage, those foul drainage runs from higher up, because of course you're putting an extension on the back of that house, and it might make an external soil pipe then become an internal pipe. So that needs to be taken into consideration.
Is there anything else we want to say about extensions at the back? I know we will do a little podcast on extensions upwards and fire, things to take into account with regard to fire. Also do a little podcast on putting in your parking at the front and things like that, using in your front garden. Is there anything else you want to say today about extensions to the back? I think that's been really helpful.
Nothing that I can really think about. I mean, we haven't covered things like budgets and costs and so on, but I think that's a discussion perhaps for another time, and there's a bit more detail required to go into that.
Right, that's brilliant. Thank you very much, Andy. Obvious to anyone watching that I have got a nicer office than you have. All right then. Thank you. See you next time. Keep
Okay,
watching,
cheerio.
everyone. Bye.